What's going on YouTube? This is SG1 Sports and you're watching our college football channel. We continue our look at the top 10 games from each week of the 2023 college football season. We're up to week 11, so just a couple more weeks left here. And week 11 is going to be huge. This is a huge weekend in college football. There are a ton of big games. The pressure will be building. Teams that are playoff contenders are going to start falling and getting upset. It always happens. And just some huge clashes, potential top 10 matchups here in week 11. And, it was a struggle the last couple of weeks. It was a struggle to find 10 games. This week, I mean, there were more than 10 games that really could be put on this list that could actually be really big games. But we're going to give you the top 10 based off of just how I think things are going to go. And at number 10, it's Florida at LSU. So this one maybe shouldn't be on this list, depending on how bad Florida is. I don't think Florida is going to be a bad team, but if you watch my prediction video, I think they're going to miss a bowl game this year just because of how tough their schedule is. But this game in the past has always been, or usually is competitive. It's a really fun rivalry. It's at LSU, which makes it tough for me to really see Florida having a chance in this game. But again, it's just one of those rivalries that I think is fun no matter what. And I think it'll be an interesting game this year. Could Florida possibly pull off a shocker or at least keep this game close? We'll see. But Florida LSU at number 10. Number 9 is Baylor at Kansas State. Big game in the Big 12. A lot of people think Baylor might be a sleeper team in this conference. Kansas State's a team that won it last year. This could be one of those elimination games, a game where the loser probably is not going to make it. I'll go ahead and say the loser of this game will not make the Big 12 championship. So this is a huge game, especially for Kansas State. They've got to take care of business here, and if Baylor's going to have a chance to sneak in there, they probably need to go on the road and win a game like this. So this is a big one, again, here in the Big 12 at number 9. Number 8 is Duke at North Carolina. How about Duke, North Carolina, top 25 matchup in football? I think we could see that this year. I think it's possible. Now, I'm a little concerned about Duke being in the top 25 just because of their schedule. They might have too many losses at this point, but I think they're going to be close to, if not one of the best 25 teams in college football this year. I do expect them to be good. And I think North Carolina has a real shot to be in the top 25 at this point as well. So maybe it's not a top 25 matchup. Maybe it is. But it's still going to be a really fun rivalry matchup here. A game that should be close, very competitive, and one I'm really looking forward to seeing. So Duke, North Carolina, yes, a football rivalry matchup here at number 8. Number 7, another rivalry game, Miami at Florida State. That's a third rivalry game here for week 11. This is not really normally a spot where you see many rivalry games, but Miami, Florida State, this is going to be a big one. Florida State, I talked at the beginning about playoff pressure building. They definitely are one of those teams that could have some playoff pressure at this point. Haven't really been in that spot. Rivalry game. Could Miami come in there and shock them, pull off an upset? I don't really see that happening, but I think Miami has a talented enough roster to make this a competitive game. I know the game wasn't close last year, but I think it could be different this year. I think Miami will have a chance to at least make it interesting. Florida State should win. They should be the better team, but who knows what things are going to look like when we get to November. And this rivalry, I think, could be good here. Number 7, Miami at Florida State. Number 6, Alabama at Kentucky. A really sneaky matchup here. Alabama, I think, is not going to be as good as I've talked about it. I don't think they're going to be as good as they have been in the past, especially offensively. I just don't see that passing game being what it was with Bryce Young and even some of the other quarterbacks that they've had before him. And so it's a team that I think is going to really depend on the run game and their defense. Well, that's what Kentucky likes to do. In fact, Kentucky, though, might be a little more balanced this year than Alabama because they've got some really good receivers. They've got Devin Leary coming in there. They're playing at home. I think they have a chance to make this game very competitive. I think this could be a really good game. I do, again, if you watch my predictions, you've been following along, I did pick Alabama to win this game, but I still think that it's one that could be close, and Kentucky could possibly make it interesting. Number 6 here, Alabama at Kentucky. We'll see what happens there. Number 5, Ole Miss at Georgia. Another game where the underdog could possibly keep it interesting. If this game was in Oxford, I would think that there's a better shot of an upset happening in Athens. I think it's going to be really tough for Ole Miss, but they're going to have a really good offense, and they're going to have the type of offense that can give Georgia defenses some trouble. So I think Ole Miss may be able to score a little bit in this game, and you never know. A couple of turnovers by Georgia. I mean, never say never. Remember, they almost lost to Missouri last year. So Ole Miss, they've got a good enough team that they could capitalize on some Georgia mistakes if they do happen. and possibly make this game interesting. So yes, Ole Miss, Georgia at number 5. Going to be a big game, and I think it will be a top 25 matchup, potentially even a top 15 matchup. Number 4, Texas at TCU. Texas looking for some revenge here. TCU, of course, a playoff team last year. Can they get there again? Is this potentially the first of 2 matchups between these 2 teams? Could we see it again in the Big 12 Championship? I think that's possible. I don't think TCU is going to drop off a lot from where they were last year. I don't think they'll be as good, but playing at home here, they've got a real shot to upset Texas. Texas is going to be the favorites in the Big 12 this year. And I just think this is going to be a really good game. Number 4, Texas at TCU. Number 3, huge game in the Pac-12, Utah at Washington. Definitely going to see some Pac-12 championship implications on the line here. The winner of this game's got a really good shot to get there. Loser probably won't make it there. And I love how the Pac-12 has put a bunch of their big games, and they've got several big games, all towards the end of the season, which is going to make for just a really fun race in the Pac-12. You're going to go into, and I don't remember when these games start happening, but you're going to go into a certain point in the season, maybe late October, where Utah, Washington, USC, and Oregon will probably all either be undefeated or have 1 loss in the conference. And maybe even Oregon State and UCLA in that conversation as well. And then all these teams are going to play each other, and it's going to be really fun to watch. I cannot wait for the Pac-12 late in the season to see how things play out. But yeah, Utah, Washington, huge game. And we'll just go right to the next one. Number 2 is USC at Oregon, another huge game in the Pac-12. And I think we could potentially be seeing the first of 2 matchups here with this one. I think we could possibly see these teams back in a rematch in the Pac-12 championship. But I think there are actually more playoff implications in this game than in that Utah-Washington game. I think this is one where both teams, again, could be sitting there with 1 loss, maybe undefeated. Winner could be in a really good spot to possibly make it into the college football playoff. The loser, maybe still a chance to get to the Pac-12 championship, but maybe their playoff hopes are gone if they already have a loss. So this is just a huge, huge matchup. I believe it will be a top 10 matchup. USC at Oregon, number 2. But our biggest game for Week 11 is not in the Pac-12, it's in the Big 12, and it's Michigan at Penn State. Huge game here. A lot of people think that this is the game that Michigan might lose. Remember, they get Ohio State at home, so this is their toughest road test, really their only road test, to be honest. I don't see them losing. I think they play Minnesota on the road. You never know. Upsets do happen. But this is going to be a huge clash. Penn State at this point, I can't remember now if they play Ohio State before or after this. But maybe they're undefeated. Maybe they have 1 loss. Michigan probably still undefeated, so possibly even a top 5 matchup. Game day probably going to be there. I think it's pretty clear this is the biggest game for Week 11. Again, Oregon-USC is a huge one as well. That one, if Penn State has a couple of losses or something, maybe USC-Oregon is the game of the week, and maybe game day goes there. But I think Michigan-Penn State is going to be the biggest game for Week 11. Do you guys agree? Do you disagree? Give me your thoughts on a loaded Week 11 for the upcoming 2023 college football season.